and it'll show participants, this is what my pension could be at. Now, Ontario is well funded. They're over 100%. My pension is not in that same position. It's funded at 72%, and that's the largest pension in the United States, CalPERS. Different scenario. They got a lot of ground to make up. What can make up that ground that's not super risky venture, like really rolling the dice on things that depend on third-party performance? And Bitcoin sits right there.
There's one of these things that's actually decentralized and doesn't have a management team and a roadmap and doesn't, force everybody to upgrade the software at the same time, and the software is always backwards compatible. So, I think that's Bitcoin is the only one that matters, that is, had a fair launch and is actually decentralized.
What's up, Sats fans? Welcome to another episode of Swan Signal. If you care about your financial future, you need to check out a couple of our offerings, including Swan IRA and Swan Private. Swan Private is our white glove concierge service where you get a trusted partner on your Bitcoin journey. We offer all kinds of education and research projects, as well as exclusive events to our Swan Private customers. Check it out today at swan.com/private. Also, Swan IRA. Swan IRA is the best way to gain exposure to real Bitcoin in a tax-advantaged account, like a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, or rolling over your 401k. So if that interests you, check it out at swan.com/IRA today. Today, we got a very special episode. We got two guests with us. We got Dom Bay, who is a Santa Monica firefighter, as well as a former firefighter, president of a union there. And then also Cory Klippsten, who needs no introduction. He is the CEO and founder of Swan Bitcoin. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sam. What's up, Cory?
Hey, great to be back. Great to see you, Dom. Great to see you, Sam.
Yeah, so I wanted to start the show because, Dom, we met at Pacific Bitcoin last year, and you made quite the splash, let's just say. I wanted to get into like a little bit of your backstory, how you got into Bitcoin, and then how you met the Swan team.
Yeah, so an infamous story now, which was an amazing story. My background, I've been a firefighter for 14 years, and leading up to Pacific Bitcoin, I was working at a station at the beach. So, rewind to pre-Pacific and the world's collapsing. FTX just came down. There's a lot of downward price action on Bitcoin. Being the Bitcoiner I am, I'm very much in tune, not worried, never scared, always prepared, ready to, get in where I need to get in. And we get a call, and it ends up being an individual who hurt their neck diving in the ocean. And wasn't anything like crazy at the time other than like, hey, my neck hurts, but we took all precautions, secured this person up. Come to find out on the way to the hospital that this is a Bitcoin analyst for Swan. So, being, for a Bitcoiner hearing that, I'm like, okay, hold on, stop the ambulance. Like, we got to talk about some stuff that's going on. Right. And of course, I didn't stop the ambulance. For those listening, don't worry. I was tempted to, but didn't. And so we got to talking and found out that he was here for the conference, which I was going to work at. Ironically, I was planned to work at this conference in 2 days. This was not coordinated unless, you consider by a higher power coordinated. So here I am. We get him up to the hospital. Usually with these, they turn out to be nothing. And so I'm assuming I'm going to see this individual at the Pacific, and he's going to be like, hey, dude, thanks for ruining my day. You sent me to the hospital. Who do I bump into at the conference? The first person, none other than Cory. I didn't know who he was at the time. And I just go up to him and I go, hey, are you involved with the event here? And of course he's like, well, yeah, kind of. I'm involved with Swan. I kind of am a part of the company, and I'm like, hey, do you know what happened to this individual? And he goes, how do you know this person? And I go, well, I ran the call. And he's like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'm sure he's bummed that we sent him up. And he goes, hey, he ended up having a broken neck, and he's about to go into emergency surgery. Pretty, at the moment, it's one of those moments as a firefighter where we don't get to see the aftermath a lot of what we do. We just do what we do, and that's it. But it was a moment where I was like, oh my God, thank God we did what we did, took the precautions we took, and thank God he's going to be okay. End up connecting with him, connect with the Swan team, get on FaceTime with him. He's going to be okay. Doctors told him, thank God he went up. Otherwise, it could have been way worse. And thus started the preface or chapter 1 of my re-up on my orange pill dose, courtesy of Swan and the incredible team there. And from there, a whole journey began.
That is a crazy story. I remember I met you at one of the Swan parties, and we shook your hand. I didn't know who you were, and you were like, "No, I was working on the beach, and I treated that individual, and now I'm here." And then Cory comes up, and he's like, "You didn't know Dom? Dom's here." And it's all just like the Bitcoin community just kind of embraces each other. And so, Cory, what was your initial reaction when he shows up at the conference, and he was going to work there anyway?
I mean, that was crazy, and everything about it was amazing. My recollection of that first meeting, it was Friday morning, so it was the second day of the conference, and I saw a random fireman walking into the conference and decided to just go kind of like thank him and his kind on behalf of Swan and Zach and the Bitcoin community for doing this. I had no idea it was going to be the guy. That never made it to our ears that that Dom was actually going to be working the conference on Friday. So that just completely blew my mind that this guy walking in that was just representative of the type of person that would step up and do the right thing happened to be the actual guy, which was awesome. So yeah, we were thrilled that later on the Magic Money Court we were able to get Dom over there and thank him in front of everybody. And then there were a lot of magical things that happened on that basketball court that day, but only one of them was like truly touched by the hand of God, which was I don't know. Let me hand it over to Dom here. I want to hear Dom hear what he remembers about the shot heard around the world.
So, Cory, who had already hit a shot that day from half court, he's like, hey, come to the court and just like, just talk about, you just like give a little rundown. I want to thank you in front of these folks. So he does. And then he kicks me the rock and goes, hey, fire up a shot, and I'm in my full uniform and I'm like, all right, dude, I'm not the best. My 3-point percentage, you can go find my old varsity team from high school. They'll let you know, well below 30%. 20s.
I mean, we're talking like he's got like the 20-pound Maglite flashlight hanging off the hip. His hat's pulled down even lower than it is right now. Keep going.
Yeah. And so I go, this one's for Zach. And you see Cory's face like, oh, like, dude, you're not putting this shot on Zach's well-being or not, are you? Like, dude, don't. And I just step back, float that thing up, hand down, man down. The thing drops and we're good. Cory's, to his relief, is like, okay, thank God. We didn't want to jinx anything. I can't believe you made that shot. I think that was a pivotal moment for me with
no warm-ups baseline three-pointer. No warm-up baseline three-pointer.
Did you hold the
ridiculous. Did you hang the Swan
held
on him?
some follow-through. Yeah. I think
like like MJ when he hit that shot.
Yeah. If I would have missed that shot, I don't think it's the same journey. A lot of things in the world would be different if I don't hit that shot. So, hey, these things are out of our control, and sometimes life comes down to a shot. That was a key one for Cory. He was in on that point.
Well, Dom, what's the deal with firefighters and Bitcoin? Because I mean, we got the Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast. Those guys are firefighters. I actually grew up right around where I grew up. And then we have, the Houston firefighters pension was one of the first to allocate Bitcoin, I think a couple of years ago. And we have you. And what's the deal with firefighters and Bitcoin? Like, do you think it's just a match made in heaven, or why do you think that all these firefighters seem to get it?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Especially in this now next chapter of my journey. There's so many parallels. Let's start with a couple. 24/7. That's what firefighters run, and they're there to take care of you 24/7, right? And as we know, Bitcoin network is open 24/7. It's there. There's no hours, office hours. It's just continually there, and it's present. That's a very unique aspect of it. The value of like taking care of people and protecting people. We know that Bitcoin was created out of the financial crisis, back in 08, 07, 08. And it was created as a way to protect people's money and their well-being and protect their time. That's something that's very important to firefighters. That's what we do. We answer a call. Boil down everything we do into that. We get a call, we show up, and we try to change the outcome. And I kind of mentioned this in one of the articles I wrote, that much in the way that a firefighter, and Cory gave me a love on this on a tweet, but in many ways, in the ways that a firefighter can show up to your worst day and change your worst day to hopefully become a better day and change the outcome, Bitcoin sits to change people's financial situations and change that outcome to make it better for them. And I believe in that strongly. And I think a lot of firefighters see that and believe in that as well. And so they're naturally attracted to this thing. Those are just a few.
What kind of resources did you first get a hold of when you were learning about Bitcoin? I'm just curious.
I didn't have the luxury of an ecosystem like Swan, which is like, I gotta just say, my first exposure to Bitcoin was in 2017 at an event, once again, that I happened to work at, not too far away from the Barker. And it was just a conference, and I learned about Bitcoin, and I had read some things about it, but not talked to people individually involved. And so I got very interested. And one thing that took me, or was very powerful for me, was the conviction of the people I talked to. It's so impressive when you see that conviction and the look in their eyes that, like, hey, I'm in on this thing. I didn't have as many resources. Obviously, you guys know there's all kinds of paths you can take, and different, like, when you're lacking the quality resources, you just go down different rabbit holes. I'm no stranger to that as well. Swan, the ecosystem for me after this event really narrowed my focus and kind of nudged me to not be a passive participant in Bitcoin, but to be an active participant and find, like, where is my place in this? What's supposed to happen? So my education in the beginning was just limited to, like, media stuff, what you can find on media. And obviously I can use the internet and the web and found different resources, but it was not the collection of quality education that I found with Swan years later.
Yeah,
Dom,
and one thing that's
Sam, let
interesting
me
about,
ask a quick question
yeah,
there. Dom, was that by chance, was that BlockCon at the aviation museum across the street from the Barker hangar?
It was at the aviation. So yes, that was
Yeah.
probably 100% the conference. Were you there?
Oh yeah, I was there. This is part of my origin story. That was where I met Jimmy Song for the first time. I think it was like October 10th and 11th of 2017, and I'd been getting sucked down the altcoin rabbit hole, and that kind of like poked my bubble and made me think, like, okay, I at least need to start spending some time on Bitcoin and understand what that is. Took another 4 or 5 months to really fully get it, but yeah, that was where it started for me.
Yeah,
That's
we
so
were in the
funny.
same spot at the same time and didn't
Yeah.
even know it, probably.
No.
And yeah, I had this mindset. Like, I always kind of had the understanding, fortunately, that Bitcoin was the one, but I believed also that there could be other things. And obviously what we've come to learn now is that, like, you know, it's just a distraction, right? Bitcoin was created. Never going to say that it was created perfect, but it is what we need right now. It was the tool for the job, and it came about at the right time. And a lot, these other things are just distractions. And so, interesting journeys, but yeah, we were there at the same time, man. That's nuts.
yeah, I mean, that's a lot of Bitcoiner journeys, right? Kind of get through the shitcoin cycle. Don't want to stay there long though, and there's good educational resources right now that kind of separate Bitcoin from the rest of the other cryptocurrencies. And now, there's a lot of reputation risk that people are learning with these recent lawsuits, like recommending these other cryptocurrencies. Cory, like, in your conversations within your network, are you finding it less difficult to justify why you went Bitcoin only and started Swan?
I mean, the people that can put their egos aside have already gotten in touch and said, wow, I can't believe you were right. It was because it was a
Wow.
hypothesis a few years ago, and trying to have a Bitcoin only financial services thesis in 2019 was really, really outside anyone's view of what might work. Everyone was talking about Coinbase as like a terminal monopoly in the USA, and like, well, we already have crypto exchanges. Why do you need a Bitcoin brokerage? And what are these other services of which you speak beyond just buying the thing? And everybody thought that you would need to encourage as much trading as possible. And I was like, well, I don't actually think that's good for 99+% of people. I just want them to buy it and take self custody, and that's it. And they're like, well, how are you going to make money? And I was like, we'll figure it out. and it turns out that there are a lot of other ways to put Bitcoin into other products, like the Swan IRA, and then you have Swan Advisor with the wealth channel, and now we're getting into asset-backed loans, and we have the Swan Vault launching, and so there are all kinds of different products and services that people need and that companies need as they go down the rabbit hole. And if you can provide, most or all of those to them, then you can have a nice big company, which is pretty cool.
It's interesting the standards that we hold, a Bitcoin only provider to, right? Hey, first of all, we want spot Bitcoin, not a dollar more. Second of all, we want it at a pretty much low to minimal fee. And anything else, if you're doing anything else, you're trying to get one over on us. By the way, we don't care if you need to make money or pay employees to do all that stuff. We just want that to take place. Not to mention, um, there's the fiat system is legacy, outdated, corrupt. But I want you to take my dollars and I want you to turn them into Bitcoin for me, so I can take the Bitcoin. And I want you to just the standards are really high, and so I can only imagine that first leap of faith for you guys as a company, like that was a big leap of faith.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun to be along the ride. Cory, the company that you built. I mean, I I think the biggest thing with Swan is that it's just a collection of Bitcoiners and just working for Bitcoin and trying to push Bitcoin's adoption. And I think you've done a great job of bringing together a group of people that are just mission driven, and it's been a fun ride. So, but with the Coinbase and Binance lawsuits, I mean, we finally have in writing them calling out specific cryptocurrencies as unregistered securities, a whole plethora of them. And many people, like if you're a beginner, if you're a noob and you're reading this headline on mainstream media or something, they go, oh, I can't touch Bitcoin now. And they conflate it. So, what would you say to somebody if they saw these lawsuits coming down on Coinbase and Binance and they thought that, like, oh, Bitcoin's not good, I shouldn't invest in that? What would you say to that individual? I'll throw it to maybe Cory and then Dom.
Bro, you're not going to make it? Or is that not empathetic? I've been trying to practice my empathy. No, I think it's pretty simple to explain. There's one of these things that's actually decentralized and doesn't have a management team and a roadmap, and doesn't force everybody to upgrade the software at the same time, and the software is always backwards compatible. So I think that's Bitcoin is the only one that matters, that is had a fair launch and is actually decentralized. There's a few other tiny ones that are proof of work, also fair launch, and I would say are tiny little commodities, but not that useful, and just kind of bleed out in value versus Bitcoin over time. So for all intents and purposes, it's the only thing that really matters. I do want to throw a little olive branch to the it's important to note that there are actually engineers and builders doing things that the market calls crypto, blockchain, DeFi, whatever, who actually do have good intentions. It's a very small percentage. Most of them are just scamming, but there are some people out there actually trying to do something. And here's the thing. Obviously, if you throw tens of billions of dollars and thousands of engineers, at something, even if by accident there will be some innovations that come out of that, it's still on balance malinvestment, because they're trying to solve things that they're not going to solve for. But even if there are some interesting innovations that come out of all of this malinvestment, that it overall is just kind of on balance a waste of capital, it's still not going to have tokens in the long run. It's still going to run on sats. So the tokens are going to be worthless. So yeah, that's just kind of how I view it. And that's how I've been able to kind of, extend an olive branch and still have some cordial conversations with people that, mean well in some cases, very few, but some, and don't want to be called a scammer, because they certainly don't think they're scamming, and their mom doesn't think they're a scammer because they raised little Johnny Shitcoiner so well. So it's been interesting. I don't think it serves us to just like, you know, beat these people while they're down when a few of them actually, thought that they were trying to do well. On the other hand, I also am just kind of a fan of classical ethics. And, I love the example of, the engineer back in the day that built a bridge had to live under the bridge with his family for a year or two after building the bridge. And it's like, there's no A for effort. Like, you either built a bridge that's going to stand or you're dead. And, I think the other analogy I often use is, one of my favorite scenes from the Scorsese movie Casino, after the slots machine gets hit 3 times in the afternoon. And, De Niro comes down onto the floor and finds the slots boss. And he's like, you didn't know after it got hit twice, you're either too dumb or you're in on it. Either way, you're fired. Right. That's the paraphrase. So it's like, I don't really give, it's no quarter given for being too stupid to see that these tokens aren't going to be worth anything, and that you're just, doing more fiat printing of money. You're never going to be able to decentralize something that started centralized like that. So I think this stuff is actually pretty obvious on its face. But, I just don't think you can impugn 100% of the character of 100% of the people that are doing these misguided things. And, and we're not out there, if we're truly going to separate Bitcoin from crypto, then I think it's almost hypocritical just to spend all your time, hating on misguided shitcoiners if you're not also hating on people that are misguided in a bunch of other different areas. So I'm just trying to graduate a little bit, and with all of the victories that we Bitcoiners have had over the last year and a half, just watching all the crypto implosions, just trying to be a little bit more magnanimous about it and a little bit less mean about it. But don't give an inch at all on the facts, so stick to it. And if they want to try to change the facts, don't give an inch, but you can still be kind.
What does he say in that movie, Cory? I want an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. Equal amount. Different scene though from Casino.
Yeah, well, I
Dude.
want to hear you do that equal amount of Satoshis in each Bitcoin, and I think we'll be good.
I gotta amend that. I'll have that ready for Pacific.
Okay.
No, that's very much in line with my approach, which is basically small entries into Bitcoin paired with an equal or greater education. Cory mentioned a really good point. Like, not all shit coins believe, like, are some of them believe they're changing what they are trying to change, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But as you dig deep into learning, you will find that Bitcoin has an explanation and foundation behind each thing you're trying to learn. And what you will find with altcoins is that it stops. There's no explanation. Well, this is going to do this because trust us. That should really raise your antenna, because with Bitcoin, it's a bottomless edge. There is no limit to what you can learn, because it's all based in solid foundation of actually doing something, proof of work. And I encourage people to not make the mistake that I made in 2017 of just learning the surface level. If you're going to go beyond a surface level of investing your hard-earned money, then you should also go beyond a surface level of learning about what you're getting into. And if you do that, you will learn that Bitcoin is something of substance and incredible value in the future, and that a lot of altcoins, maybe on purpose, maybe not on purpose by accident, are very empty and shallow. And you'll see that very clearly.
Yeah, well said, Dom. Bitcoin works from the get-go, and it actually is is a solution to a problem. The world desperately needs money that is decentralized and resistant to debasement as well as censorship. And so you've been going around trying to educate people about this, Dom. And specifically, you've been working a lot with unions. And the Santa Monica firefighter union became the first union to buy Bitcoin. But not only that, they also took self custody. So, congratulations, first off. And why unions? Like, why have you turned your focus to orange pilling them?
Yeah, so my kind of union work ended very right around the time when I finished Pacific and started getting involved and learning more. Again, Swan's been really supportive, man. I've learned so much on Cafe Bitcoin, learned so much from you, Sam, like your show, Cory show. All the participants are these incredible educators. And so when I was getting off the union work, I'm like, where is this intersection? Like, where is it? And continued learning, and kind of took this, started really learning about the importance of adoption, the importance about teaching people self custody. And then it's like, okay, well, what's one of the largest, most active, you know, forces of nature in the world, right? And it's humans, it's workers, right? I would argue in some ways humans are it's the human version of hash power, right? They provide the energy behind creating something of value. And so getting them, I kind of started seeing very clearly that educating them to at least know about Bitcoin. You don't have to buy any. Just see what I see. I just want you to see what I'm seeing, and then discredit it or accept it where it is, became very important to me. And then I started seeing, how come no union has ever self-custodied Bitcoin? And there's a lot of obstacles in place, but the biggest obstacle was that if you're gonna contribute something of high value, like take a huge step, like what you mentioned, Houston, Sam, and in 2019, I think they put like 25 million into various actual tokens, but it was not self-custody, because how do you start with self-custody? By going, let's put 25 million onto a cold card, and let's explore this thing. It's not in line with learning. So I saw the opportunity. I got to Santa Monica. I wanted my home union to see what I saw. They're awesome. Our board is incredible. Our membership has always been forward looking. They were like, let's check this thing out. We did a very, very small contribution to get our foot in and self custody and take that step. And so I think it's important for workers who face a lot of challenges with losing earning power to inflation. They have a lot of challenges with their retirement funds and pensions being there. The legacy system, we saw what happened in the financial crisis. A lot of pensions got wrecked. And they're a frequent scapegoat when things go wrong, to go, hey, take a couple bucks from the workers, take some cents from them. It'll be okay. And so I really wanted them to find Bitcoin. As it became and is like my mission.
So, Dom, when you're looking at these unions and these pensions, and they're wondering if they should allocate to Bitcoin, what's the holdup in the conversations? Where are there's still gaps in their understanding with Bitcoin, and why maybe did they decide not to allocate? And how do you get your points across to them that, hey, this is actually a really beneficial asset to add to a portfolio?
A lot of the biggest obstacle that I found is miseducation, and you guys are familiar with it. So are all your listeners. It's the punchlines, right? Um, Bitcoin, didn't that drop from 69,000 to 15,000? Isn't Bitcoin like really doesn't exist? It's like just something someone made up. Aren't there a bunch of scams involved? The whole thing is just it's a front for criminal organizations, right? Like these are newspaper punchlines, and that's where the education stops. Now, you can try to go dismiss that and go, that's dumb, let's push that aside, or you can address it head on. And so I try to address it head on by saying, that's fine. If you want to have that fear and you don't want to look past the headline, okay, but let's work around that. We're going to do small allocations and do education and reposition your understanding of Bitcoin. And that's the approach we're going to take. I found that to be really successful for taking that first step, because really it's just about that first step. If you can then educate folks, like for Santa Monica, we're going to have a committee. We'll have guidance from folks like Cory and good people that can kind of like give us ideas of options and things like that. it's about taking that first step. And so, just to your point, what's the holdup? That's a big one in unions. Pensions, whole different animal, right? The institutions have a lot of infrastructure. Um, they have a lot of obstacles that they face. And Cory, I'm sure, could talk a lot more about institutions and some of their challenges, because he's working so hard on trying to bridge that gap and make it easier for institutions to hold.
Yeah, there is a lot to be solved around essentially institutional custody of Bitcoin and kind of the schemes, and just being, I think, really thinking it through, what is going to be best for a given situation. How many keys, who's going to hold it. I think a lot of this is going to head toward multi-institutional custody, which I think is probably, I think it will eventually get considered a subset of self custody. I know that's already kind of how the Unchained team thinks about it, and it's how we, I think, are thinking about it for Swan Vault, which we're launching in October as well. But this idea that if you hold a key and no single third party has the key or all the keys, and basically is just holding your Bitcoin, but if it's spread out in a scheme that works, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've seen a lot of Bitcoiners warm up to multi-party compute as something that is probably the right way for most corporations and organizations to custody keys, or one of the right ways to do that. So I think there's a lot of advancement on that. It basically lets you swap out key signers, and everybody can basically use their phones with biometrics essentially, and you get your quorum together to sign a transaction or something like that. But it makes this stuff a lot easier. As far as the actual pitch and getting people on board, man, it's we're creating better vectors of attack, I think, and this nexus of activity that Dom is partially spurring, along with Hafa Zaguri, our chief investment officer, and just all the deep experience that he brings in moving institutions into new asset classes, which he's been doing for 20 years, and now applying that full time in Bitcoin. I think tools like nakamotoportfolio.com, being able to look at what actually happens to a portfolio when you add some Bitcoin into it at different levels and with different assumptions, and then being able to use that as a tool that you can walk somebody through in a meeting. I think we already got a meeting with North Carolina to walk them through, and that was based on just us seeing that they were talking about it, and there's a Bitcoin friendly person on their board, and it's very easy to kind of connect over Twitter. I see that happening more and more frequently in the coming years. So I think just getting that story out there, folks like Greg Foss are out there, using the tool for his meetings, and, you can kick out your own slides and your own graphics and use it for your meetings, or change the code if you want. It's all open source and you can hack away at it. And it's kind of a community tool at this point already. So I think that will be very, very helpful. And then, I think a lot of this comes down to just when you're in an organization and you're on some kind of deciding board, you can only stick your own neck out so far. And so you need a bit of air cover, a little CYA, as they say. And I think that's what the BlackRock and Fidelity attempts to launch ETFs, even the fact that they're trying to launch it, has already made these conversations so much easier. Because if it's good enough for essentially the government's asset manager, their chosen horse, BlackRock, basically an arm of the government at this point, then it should be good enough for us to discuss as a union or a pension fund.
Yeah, the Cory mentioned that show, which just the right place at the right time. I don't know how I got so blessed, but seeing Hoffa's tool, this like created this. There's been a lot of discussion, and the whole point of that tool was to show institutions like, here, take a look. Like, let's just look. Is there harm to looking at how Bitcoin would impact your portfolio? Like, surely that can't be dangerous. Although, like Cory said, there's so much of this miseducation that just entertaining that thought, they're worried about criticism from people being like, oh, look, Bitcoin dropped again. You're so foolish for going to go on this show. And that's just noise. So this show with Hoffa and Foss and Carlasari is to get fund managers to come on, have a two-way conversation, learning about Bitcoin, but also learning from institutions. What are your worries? Like, let's not push those aside. What is your concern? Hey, you're a fund manager. You put a 3% allocation to Bitcoin and the volatility drops. What does that mean for you? Are you getting fired? Do you have challenges? How could you avoid that? We get to learn about that, and then we make a hypothetical allocation, which to the secondary now we can also educate the participants, because at the end of the day, fund managers serve the participants, right? And if all of them feel a certain way about something, that's going to create a pressure that they have to either answer to, or it can be a supportive pressure where they can take a step into Bitcoin and go, I'm supported by 90% of my participants. They want this. Therefore, what happens is not all on me. And so with that show concept, we kind of want to approach the top of the fund managers, but also get the participants involved. On our first show, we had the Ontario Teachers Pension, and we highlighted that fund. In the future, we'd love to get the participants of a fund like that to come engage in the show and take a look, see how this can affect your pension that you're depending on to retire. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach that, but it's going to be an exciting journey. This second, what I kind of refer to as like the second layer of adoption, or not second, just an additional layer of adoption, which will be institutional adoption.
Yeah, the show that they're mentioning is the Nakamoto Gauntlet, which Dom is hosting and using Hoffa's tools that he built on the NakamotoPortfolio.com, which anybody can go check out. But you can basically plug in and model certain portfolios, and they're going through each one. And I thought it was crazy when Hoffa did this. They found that the optimal allocation for Bitcoin for the Ontario fund was 25%. Was that right, Dom? Which it would be probably a big sell to say YOLO 25% in right now, but that was the optimal allocation that they found, right?
Yeah, he puts the numbers together, and then we do some of it before the show, and just forget about the pressures and the realities of the world. He's like, hey, look, I'm looking at the numbers and how Bitcoin has performed, and to take this thing to the next level, 25% would be like the sweet spot if you weren't worried about all these external factors. Of course, you have a lot of things like pressures and
Yeah.
it's a lot more pressure than that. And so we all kind of gave our selection at the end. We landed with Hoffa's for the first episode, so we attached that to the show. It was 1% working its way to 3%. Now we can track to see how it did, and we'll see if we're bad fund managers or if we're okay. We have Bitcoin on our side, and so I think it's going to do well over the years. And it'll show participants, this is what my pension could be at. Now, Ontario is well funded. They're over 100%. My pension is not in that same position. It's funded at 72%, and that's the largest pension in the United States, CalPERS. Different scenario. They got a lot of ground to make up. What can make up that ground that's not super risky venture, like really rolling the dice on things that depend on third party performance? And Bitcoin sits right there, ready to be that asset, ready to be a partner in infrastructure and stuff like that. So would love to get them on eventually. And because there are a lot of pensions that are in a tough spot and they need something. I don't want to say a miracle, but like they need something that is really going to fill those gaps.
I feel like pensions have been a slow-moving train wreck that everyone knows about, but nobody actually wants to address. I saw the unfunded pension liabilities nationwide is at 8.3 trillion. And I actually just saw, like, from my hometown, Chicago, they have 4 funds, and their average funded is 19% to 40% funded, and the average is 70%. And what do? They went into leverage. And so, what would you say to these? Like, CalPERS also took on leverage a couple of years ago. What do you guys think about that? And then say, like, what about Bitcoin? And these pensions, the aggregate public pension assets are at 5.3 trillion. So this is a huge pool of capital that could make a real big difference, not only in Bitcoin's adoption, but in these pensions. And so, like, what do you guys think of, like, all these pensions are going into leverage when they're not allocating to Bitcoin, and how do we get that message across to them? Either one.
it's like, hey, choose your risk, right? But don't dismiss learning about Bitcoin because you think it's risky when you're taking on incredible risk with leverage. You're getting involved in venture capital, which Cory can attest to is no easy ball game. You got to be, very focused and all that stuff. One thing, Sam, I know you've talked about this a lot. Pensions are big holders of commercial real estate, both office and real estate, and retail. That's another big bogey ahead.
The only buy what you know advice holds for organizations as well as it does for individuals. And so education has to walk in lockstep with accumulation. And yes, buying a little bit of Bitcoin or having a little bit of Bitcoin given to you can be a spur to make you want to learn more about it. But you're only going to be able to go much harder at Bitcoin and have a larger allocation if you actually understand it pretty well. The more you buy, the more you know, the more you buy, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the more you can weather the volatility and be prepared. We talked a lot about that in the show, right? The volatility is a big negative for people, but if you build your strategy around that because you know the way that the money is programmed, and it is programmed, you can ride that and adjust and set yourself up. Don't fear it, embrace it, knowing that like this isn't a 1 year, 2 year pop. You can try to play anything like that. This is long term. So we work that out using the Nakamoto portfolio to go, look, here's the volatility. Here's how you can protect yourself from drawdowns. Here's how you can position yourselves to not be affected by that. Here's how you can prep and create engagement is really important. That's another reason why with the unions, I'm a huge fan of it coming from the bottom up. It's easy as, Sam, if you're running a union to say, we're buying Bitcoin and here's why, but you better be ready if you have some fallout, if there's volatility. And to give you an example, the 2 days after we self-custodied Bitcoin, the SEC sent the lawsuits against Binance and Coinbase. And if that had been for a massive amount, let's just say we took like 75% of our portfolio and put it in, and the members don't even know the basics, they're going to go, Sam, what did you do to us, my friend? I see there's a lawsuit. Is that us? Are we doing something illegal? And you're like, whoa, 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 hold on. Now, if
Yeah.
it's a small amount, they can go, okay, I know we're in self custody, and like I want to, my eyes are open. I'm not scared. I want to learn. If it's this insane amount, it's very difficult for humans to learn when they're afraid. We know that, and so, um, you know, you can't escape that education.
Yeah, what I love about what you guys are doing at the Nakamoto Gauntlet and the Nakamoto portfolio is you're kind of speaking their language, right? And you're just saying, "Hey, look at this asset. Look at this money. It can maximize risk-adjusted returns if you include it in a diversified portfolio." And that's kind of like talking their language, and they're like, "Oh, okay," showing them the numbers. So check out that show if you all the listeners, Nakamoto Gauntlet. I really enjoyed the first episode, and so congratulations, Dom, on starting that. We brought up the Coinbase and the Binance lawsuits and all of these tokens. They don't have any regulatory clarity whatsoever. The only one that has regulatory clarity is Bitcoin. It's been deemed a commodity by multiple regulators over the years. And the other place that has a lot of regulatory clarity is El Salvador. Obviously, it's been made a legal tender. And Cory, you've been doing a lot of work at El Zante Capital and as well as making some other plans for El Salvador. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I finally got down there. When did I go? I guess the end of February. Went down for a couple of days, did some meetings, and hung out. Did not get to El Zonte, but I spent some time in San Salvador, the capital. Very impressive. The energy down there, the vibe is great. The anecdotes that you get from people are fascinating and very uplifting. My favorite was the guy that was kind of like my handler that arranged cars and kind of hung out in case I needed anything while I was there. It was probably 27 or 28-year-old guy, and he was just he had been following us for a while, and he wanted to talk basketball because he knew from Twitter that I was into basketball, and he wanted to tell me that in the previous 6 months, for the first time in a decade, he'd been able to play basketball. Because since he graduated high school, he no longer had access to the safe school gym, and you couldn't play outdoor in the parks in El Salvador because of gangs and crime. So he and his friends just hadn't played basketball for 10 years, and it dawned on them last summer that they could go outside and play basketball again. So he was just kind of elated. And I think that's something that, the analogy was interesting, because a lot of times we're like, well, the money doesn't need fixing. It works well enough. But in other places around the world, the money is totally horribly broken. And, we don't really think about the freedom to be able to go outside and shoot some hoops in most places around the USA, because it's no problem to go do that if you want to. And then there are places around the world where you don't even have that level of freedom, and how amazing it is when that changes for you. So I thought that was really touching and moving. Definitely inspired me to, want to talk to our team and formulate some plans. So we're opening up Swan House El Salvador right in El Zonte, October 11th through November 21st. So 6 weeks we'll be down there. And yeah, there'll be Swan staying there. It's an 8-bedroom house. We're also putting up a lot of Bitcoiner friends and guests, and we'll be throwing events, kind of throughout the 6 weeks that we're down there. Adopting Bitcoin, I want to say, is November 7th through the 9th. So if you're wanting to come to El Zonte before or after, I already know a lot of events planned around, what's the villas? Garten, I think. Where Max and Stacy usually stay. I think there's some events already planned for the few days before adopting Bitcoin. So we'll be around those and hosting people, and I'm sure we'll convert one of the 8 bedrooms into a podcasting studio, as we usually, we tend to do that sort of thing. So that'll probably be available to podcasters that want to come hang out. And if you want to record there, that should be easy. And then, we have, El Zonte Capital. Yeah. Sam, you obviously got to go down there, and Dom will take you surfing to his spot, since he went down there recently.
Dom, you got to do that
for sure. And then El Zonte Capital is an AngelList fund, which we set up as a crowdfunding vehicle, so I can actually talk about it and advertise it, and we can actually take non-accredited investors into it as well. So that's pretty cool. So elzontecapital.com if you're interested in contributing. I would say when we started it, not quite a year and a half ago, but probably it was March or something of last year. It was still a little bit early, because there weren't a lot of startups there yet. Now there are. The entrepreneurial enthusiasm and activity in El Salvador has exploded. A lot of companies are opening offices there. A lot of companies are choosing to domicile there. And then there are a lot of, really, really intelligent, experienced, and entrepreneurial Salvadorans that have decided to start companies. So there's, hardware and software companies that are doing Bitcoin stuff now. There's, frankly, the slickest looking Bitcoin ATM that I've seen. I've got their deck on my desk right now, looking at making an investment there in K1. Don't tell them, because, haven't negotiated the deal yet, but I guess this will get out. But anyway, it looks pretty cool. Where
we want them.
So you guys can front run the heck out of me there if you're good enough to look them up. But
I just can't wait till you're on the meeting where you're like, I got some concerns with the appearance of the thing, and you're like, no, we heard otherwise.
Yeah, but I want to say so the Coding Academy has their first class coming out. So they've taken 21 high potential students and put them through, Bitcoin boot camp. Basically, I think Adam Back is like taking them to Switzerland for like a bunch of expert lightning workshops and stuff like this. I mean, it's nuts, the stuff that's going on. They're hoping to have the next class be 50 people. So now there's like local labor. So it's really spawning this ecosystem of excitement and activity. And, there's not that many ways to invest in the El Salvador story. You buy land, I guess. So that's certainly something that you could do. But I think also just investing in this ecosystem that's bubbling up. Strike is opening an office down there. Fold is opening an office down there. We're looking at it too. We might open up an office down there. So yeah, very, very bullish on El Salvador and excited for this fall.
Yeah, my trip down there, Sam, if I just touch on it real quick.
Yeah.
Very similar, life-changing trip for me. I went with 2 firefighters, and we went with the commitment of only using Bitcoin. We were like, hey, if we can't use it, we're going to move on. We talked to everyone that we interacted with, and asked like, why? why not, why yes, what do you think of Bukele, everything, learned so much about just real adoption at the ground level. Was an amazing experience. Everyone had tremendous support for Bukele there. And you left with that feeling of like, I want a piece of this, what they have going on. And so, to what Cory's doing with El Zonte Capital, like when you go there and visit, Sam, have you been before?
I haven't been there yet.
When you go, you're going to leave and go, I need to somehow like get involved, whether it's get a spot here or invest. So I think that there's going to be a lot of success with that. And it's just really interesting, that whole experience down there. Adopting Bitcoin is going to be awesome. I'm actually going to try to give a presentation there. And so I'm slated to do that. So I can't wait to go down. And Sam, we're going to get you surfing, dude, because that place is awesome.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go surfing with you. That way, if I wreck myself, you're right there to take care of me.
Don't go with John because it'll be triple overhead
Chanel,
waves. Yeah, too big, dude. We don't like, he's in a different level, dude. So we can't.
I see videos, man. He's a good surfer. I'll give John that.
Yeah,
Good dude.
yeah.
Um, yeah, man. So like, Cory, I know you got to run soon. I wanted to throw out there just like, what's your plans for Swans over the next 12 months? Like, if you can look out to the next year, what's some things that you're excited that we're working on? You already brought up the house in El Salvador. What other things are you excited about at the company level internally?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this on Twitter. I think we put out the seas have parted video a few days ago, but that's really what this is. With the clear bifurcation between Bitcoin and crypto. I think the price action of Bitcoin being back above 30K. I think kind of the early rumblings of a bull market. The having is a meme that works until it doesn't. So we've got to assume, I certainly assume there's some kind of bull market coming sometime soon. And, it'd be nice if it peaked in late 2025 as per the usual 4-year schedule, but we'll see what happens. When efficient markets and Bitcoin collide, no one knows what will happen. But, I think that it's time to be super aggressive. By that night of Monday the 5th, when we saw the Binance lawsuit, I had greenlit a tripling of the sales team and a 15x increase in ad spend for Swan, because it seems completely obvious to me that this is the time to be as noisy as possible. Move up in the funnel a bit. We're typically kind of mid funnel because people come in, they hear about Bitcoin, they get confused by Ethereum and Andreessen Horowitz and all these Ripple lies for, a year. And then you can kind of pick them off after they sour on shitcoins. But I think we can get a lot more people from a standing start straight into Bitcoin over the next couple of years, and probably forever after. Because I think this is the cycle when we just kind of like leave it behind, and there's just enough education and enough smart people just saying focus on Bitcoin, that a lot more people in the millions will just skip shitcoins completely. And I think that's the best possible thing that we could see for, the increasing the certainty that we usher in a new era of human freedom and progress without fighting a dark battle against, the the axis of shitcoinery with governments and banks and shitcoins contra Bitcoin. So that's what I want to see happen, is us just seize this opportunity. We're certainly taking the calculated risk of going way faster, hiring more people, spending more money, raising way more money this fall. I think it's just it's the time to go and take the market. And I recommend that all Bitcoin only companies do the same thing. I think this is the time, run with us. Let's all run together and compete as friends on Team Bitcoin and win the championship.
Dom, what about you? Next 12 months, what are you excited about?
Man, I'm still learning so much, and I'm really excited. I'm working now with like about a half dozen unions across the country. So this kind of mission that I title Proof of Workforce. I'm really going to work and focus on that and see where it takes me. The goal is to educate unions, labor organizations, and pensions on Bitcoin. I will go anywhere in the country. I'll talk to anyone. I'm just really passionate to see workers learn about this before it's too late. Like Cory mentions, it's a time to be aggressive, especially it's a time to be aggressive in the education. You don't have to, in my opinion, especially for unions, it may not be a win to just, but you can learn a lot. I mean, look, we had Pacific, when was that? November of 22, and it's July right now at 23. Honestly, I couldn't even talk to myself in November of 22. I would be like, who is this, right? Because my education has been accelerated so heavily. And a lot of that is because of the ecosystem, the great people at Swan. So I'm forever grateful in that. And I found my spot. Anyone who's interested in helping with that, there's a lot of articles I have out. I have a little manual of how Santa Monica did their thing on Substack. I just want to provide resources and get people on the mission. So I'm around for that. And my only message I would say is, do not look at Bitcoin and your lack of education as if you don't have something to contribute, because every person has a unique experience and they can benefit from the knowledge of folks like Sam, Cory, and they can take all of that leased out info and come up with an idea that is never totally our own idea, but we have this now and apply it in a way that we only know. For me, that's the union space, and I'm going to hit that relentlessly over the next year.
Boy, I really want to second that.
That makes me bullish.
I just want to second that, Dom, man. One way that anyone who's new or relatively new to Bitcoin can add a ton of value is to ask the questions that you have. If you ask them privately of someone who's in Bitcoin, you're providing a data point to them that's telling you that question is out there, and like that signal is really, really strong, and it may make them go and create resources for you and other people like you. If you have the guts to ask it publicly and ask it on Twitter or something like that, then guaranteed, if you're asking it, there's 1,000 other people that are going to see it that had the same question. And, somebody will find it, somebody will answer it, somebody will highlight it to somebody who can answer it. Man, I've been asking questions like a noob, and I still am such a noob in so many areas of Bitcoin, maybe all of them. And I still am just asking questions on Twitter with regularity, even though allegedly I'm supposed to know some things about Bitcoin. It's the best way to engage this community, is just to come with, open heart, open mind, and ask your questions. There's never been a subject that has more willing participants in getting you your answers.
Yep.
That's how we drive Bitcoin's adoption. Well, we're out of time, guys. Thanks for joining us for Swan Signal. This has been a great conversation. Dom, if you're a union, if you're a pension that's listening in here, please reach out to Dom or check out the Nakamoto Gauntlet to learn more about it. You can even go to the Nakamoto portfolio and run the portfolios yourself. But Dom, where would you want to point people towards to see your work or contact you?
My Twitter has everything on there. So the Twitter handle is Baywatch1, and that's my last name spelled BEI. Has nothing to do with the show Baywatch. Doesn't have to do that with the rescue. It has to do with the fact that I did fail 11th grade math, to what Greg Foss always talks about. And the teachers used to say, Bay, we're watching you. We're on Baywatch. And that's where the name came from. So yeah, Baywatch1 on Twitter, and then I have a Substack, and I'm going to get a website for proof of workforce and just be working on that. So if you can find me, and I'm around for any union or pension, I'll always be available to them to talk and help them in any way that they need.
Awesome. And Cory, I think people know where to find you, but if they don't, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, just honestly follow any of Walker America, Djambala Hodl, Joe Nakamoto, or B Quittem on Twitter, and you'll find me on one of those handles. So yeah.
Amen.
All right. Thank
you.
Cool.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for coming on Swan Signal, and have a great day. Okay.
If you care about your financial future, you need to check out a couple of our offerings, including Swan IRA and Swan Private. Swan Private is our white glove concierge service where you get a trusted partner on your Bitcoin journey. We offer all kinds of education and research projects, as well as exclusive events to our Swan Private customers. Check it out today at swan.com/private.
Also, Swan IRA. Swan IRA is the best way to gain exposure to real Bitcoin in a tax-advantaged account, like a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, or rolling over your 401k. So if that interests you, check it out at swan.com/IRA today.